Okay, everyone. If there's anyone here. This is the Dvar Malchus shir that we give usually on Wednesday nights. And today is Thursday, but we'll do it now. I just want to complete. We started this a few weeks ago, and then I was absent for 2 weeks or so. But I don't want to leave it incompleted. So even though this is referring to the time that passed already, but we're still in the month of Shvat, and it gives us a lot of insight into the power that there is, particularly this month, especially related to Yud Shvat, which we celebrated. Yud Shvat, the Friediger Rebbe's passing, and the Kabbalah Sanesius, the beginning of the leadership of our Rebbe, and particularly this year that it's 70 years, or we're starting 70 years of the Rebbe's leadership. It is very powerful, and it's interesting that in 1992, the last year the Rebbe spoke to us thus far, he's speaking a lot about 70 years, the 70 years of the previous Rebbe's life, because the Friediger Rebbe passed away when he was 70 years old. So he talks all about 70 and so on and so forth. So we'll just give a little brief something. It was the last few classes we were talking about Parshas Ve'era, that there were primarily two tkufis. There's two main periods in Jewish life. There is the first period, which was the period until Matan Torah, which was the work of the fathers, and then there is the revelation, the period after Matan Torah, which is considered the work of the children. We learned that the godliness that the children access, the godliness that is revealed after the giving of the Torah, that we access through our Torah and mitzvahs, is infinitely superior to that which our forefathers had experienced, and that's the theme of Parshas Ve'era. I revealed myself to the fathers, and I did not reveal my true name, the power of Yud Kei Vav Kei, but to the children, to you, I want to reveal Yud Kei Vav Kei. And we explained, and I'm not going to go over this, that the idea that after the giving of the Torah we have the revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei is related to the concept that after the giving of the Torah, and only after the giving of the Torah, are we able to experience the limitlessness of God. The fact that we can connect a physical object, that's what the mitzvahs after the giving of the Torah is, that we can take physicality that is the lowest rung of existence in terms of its experiential relationship to God. Hashem is the most concealed and hidden from the physical, and the ability to be able to break through into the physical and do something and make the physical, God express himself in the physical through a mitzvah, is showing on the complete limitlessness of Hashem, and that's why it's indicative of Ani Havaya, of Hashem's true being. The limitations that were before the giving of the Torah, that God can only be accessed through spiritual meditations and things like that, transcendence, that itself is a limitation on Hashem. That means that the godliness, the light, the connection that they were making was only to an expression of Hashem and not to God's essence. However, we learned that even though it was it was not available to our forefathers before the giving of the Torah, yet they were the ones, it's their power that enabled it to happen after the giving of the Torah. In other words, all the godliness that we experience after the giving of the Torah is because of their toil and their efforts and their superhuman work that they did before the giving of the Torah. And we explained why that is, why it was their work, even though they had limited access, that finally manifests after the giving of the Torah. Okay. Now, he adds over here in Siv Zayin, we might have even learned this parak. I'm just going to start at this point in order to be able to continue into the idea of Yud Shvat. He's asking the question, okay, now we're living after the giving of the Torah. Once we're living after the giving of the Torah, who cares about the state of existence that happened before the giving of the Torah? Why is that important to us? Why is that something that we have to even discuss or learn about? And obviously when you're learning about something in the Torah, it means that you're connecting to it. If we're already post-Matan Torah, fine. So we're in something so much greater. We're way beyond Kel Shakai. which is the revelations that happened before the giving of the Torah. So why do we deal with it today? So you have to say that in some ways, even today is also considered before the giving of the Torah. And the reason for that is because even though we had Matan Torah, we only had the chitzonius, the external of Matan Torah, not the pnimius of Matan Torah. Because the real truer light and grand finale of the giving of the Torah is only going to be after Mashiach comes. As we know that the Torah that Mashiach is going to teach is going to be way, way, way greater and superior to the Torah that we've learned all along. And so you see that the Torah itself, which is connected to the revelation of the essence of God, we only connect to externally and not yet internally. So in that sense, this entire period of post-Matan Torah until Mashiach, from when the Torah was given, the last over 3,500 years, this entire period of time, in some ways, could be considered like before Matan Torah. And that's considered like the revelation of Kel Shakai, and we are waiting for the revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei that's going to happen after Mashiach comes. Now, but that seems to contradict what it says explicitly in the verse. The pasuk says that after, by the giving of the Torah, L'chein amar lebnei Yisroel ani avaya, I'm revealing my true name, my Yud Kei Vav Kei. So if God is revealing His true self, and as we said before, the very idea that we can access God in the physical, do a physical action and connect literally, like taking hold of God, so to speak, through a physical action, is a sign of God's limitlessness. That even physicality, the epitome of obscurity doesn't obscure Him, can't block Him. So we have already the Gilui of Havaya. How can we say that we don't have the Gilui of Havaya? It's only a limited revelation. And the answer is because Yaakov Avinu says, when he speaks about the future, Yaakov says, V'hoya Hashem li lelokim. That Havaya, Hashem will be to me as a God. That's a simple meaning. That if he says to God, if you will do for me so, and so, you'll take care of me, then I make you a promise, and that you will be my God. In Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe explains, what does it mean, V'hoya Havaya li lelokim? That Havaya li lelokim means not that that Hashem is going to be my God. It means that Havaya, what is now considered Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's going to come a time when that's going to be considered the name of Elokim. Elokim is already constricted godliness, limited godliness. So what we're really saying is like this. In the Yud Kei Vav Kei itself, there is two levels. There's the lower Yud Kei Vav Kei, which today is considered infinite and beyond and limitless. And then there is the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei, which we can't even discuss because we know nothing about it. And the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's only going to become our transcendental energy after Mashiach comes. So what's going to happen? The current transcendental infinite light of God that we consider infinite is then going to be internalized. It's going to become Elokim. It's going to become something that we can really absorb. And then we're going to experience a higher transcendental, infinite, beyond time and space light, the revelation of Havaya. And that's the idea of, Chassidus says, Gilui Havaya D'Liela, the revelation of the higher Havaya, the superior Havaya. There is the lower Havaya and there is the higher Havaya. And the difference between Shakai and the lower Havaya is incomparably less, which we said is the whole idea of the difference between the forefathers and the children by giving of the Torah. As great as that distance is, it doesn't compete to the difference in Havaya itself between the lower Yud Kei Vav Kei and the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is only going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. Now, and that's the meaning that in some way we're even before the giving of the Torah. The real giving of the Torah is going to be the revelation of Havaya D'Liela, the higher Havaya, which is going to be only after Mashiach comes. But we have a question. If didn't we say that God's omnipotence is revealed by the fact that we can do a mitzvah, which is which is drawing Havaya down into the physical? So how are we saying that this is only the lower Havaya? So what more are we going to have when Mashiach comes? And the answer is, the Rebbe says that Havaya, when we're speaking about Havaya D'Liela, the higher Havaya, we don't only mean the infinite light, but we mean the essence of the infinite. the essence of God himself. And the fact that right now we can connect to the infinite, but we don't experience the infinite. For example, when you put on a tallis in the morning, you wrap yourself in a godly infinite light, and we don't feel it. We can be completely distracted and oblivious to something happening. You can give tzedakah and channel the infinite, literally channeling God's right arm into your hand, and your arm and God's arm are becoming totally one. You're learning Torah and your brain is fusing with God's brain, and yet we can be clueless. And that's because even though we're connecting, we're not feeling. That means it's not revealed. And the reason it's not revealed, that's itself is indicating a certain limitation. What's the limitation? Whatever, it's a limitation. So when Mashiach will come, the Rebbe says one very strong idea. He says the essence is not limited to have to be concealed. Even though it doesn't make any sense that essence revealed, yet God is not limited by any logic. So the essence could be revealed. And that's going to show, and that's going to be an indication that we've reached the time, we've reached the point when God is not holding anything back. The very, very deepest, innermost of his being is being expressed in the world through our Torah and mitzvahs, not only that we can connect to him, but we can feel him everywhere. And that's the Gilui that's going to be when Mashiach comes. And that's what we're striving for. But that's going to come as a result of all the Torah. And now, let's now go back. Just like the relationship of, now I'm going to do a comparison, just like the relationship of pre-Matan Torah to post-Matan Torah, which we said the greater revelation happens only after the giving of the Torah, incomparably greater than the godliness that was available to our forefathers. Yet, the work that it took to make it happen is dafka, the work that was done, the plowing of the field, the work that was done. The actual growing happens after the giving of the Torah. But the preparation and the work that was needed to make it happen is dafka, the work that happened before the giving of the Torah. Their work was much greater than the work of the Jewish people after the giving of the Torah. So the same relationship is also regarding us today and what's going to happen after Mashiach comes. After Mashiach comes, we're going to have the greatest revelation, nothing to speak about. You can't compare anything that was ever happened in the world to what's going to be after the coming of Mashiach. Gilui Havaya Deli'ela, the revelation of the supernal Havaya, of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, tetragrammaton on the deepest, highest, most essential level. Yet, it's dependent not on what's going to happen. We're not going to stimulate it after Mashiach comes. We're stimulating it now, primarily in exile, primarily in the darkest time of exile. Because in order for us to really tap the essence of God, we need to tap our own essence. And when do we tap our essence? When we're blindfolded, when we're numb, when we have zero reason to be Jewish, when we have no stimulation, when we have all kinds of persecution and all kinds of temptations and all kinds of distractions, and yet we stick to it. And yet we're learning Torah and we're doing mitzvahs for no other reason that this is who we are. The essence of the Jewish people is revealed during the time of exile in our observance of Torah and our rock-stubborn observance of Torah and mitzvahs, literally of myself and you and all Jews in these days when it's very dark. And now is when we actually tap the essence, which is going to be revealed after Mashiach comes. So you see how it's perfectly aligned before Matan Torah, after Matan Torah, and then after Matan Torah compared to the time to after Mashiach, how they connect. So now the Rebbe says this can also be seen in the order of three parshios: Shmos, Ve'era, and Boi. But before that, he says the revelation of the higher Havaya of Yud Kei Vav Kei, of the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei, isn't that we don't see in Parshas Ve'era, that we only come to in Parshas Boi. Parshas Bo, which is the third parsha of Sefer Shemos, being that Sefer Shemos is called the Sefer of Geula, Sefer of Redemption, so from each parsha, from parsha to parsha, we are moving to another stage of redemption. And really, it's all summarized in the first three Torah portions. Parsha Shemos is the introduction to redemption. It's still exile, preparing for redemption. Parshas Va'era is the redemption from Egypt including the giving of the Torah, even though the Torah wasn't given in the era, but you have already all the ingredients of the giving of the Torah, because God is going to reveal Havaya, like he says in the beginning of Parshas, the era, L'chein amar l'bnei Yisrael ani Havaya, I am Yudke Vavke, I am who, God's true name, which is the essence of the giving of the Torah. So that's in Parshas Ve'era. Parshas Bo is already the full Yetzias Mitzrayim, referring to the exodus from the final exile, the days of Mashiach. And where do we see it in Bo El Paro? So in the very first words of the Parsha, it says, Bo El Paro, come to Paro. So the Zohar says that the Eibishter took Moshe Rabbeinu, Idrin Lifnime Idrin. Hashem took Moshe Rabbeinu inside, into the inner chamber, to the innermost point. Moshe was afraid to go there, and God took him in. Simply, it means that Hashem took Moshe Rabbeinu for a confrontation with the essence of darkness and of evil. But we know in Chassidus that Paro doesn't only mean everything in the unholy, in some weird way, has its source in holiness. And the more corrupt something is in its unholy manifestation, it's actually an indication of even a loftier source. So Paro, the Zohar speaks of a Paro of holiness. Paro of holiness, the Zohar says, is a level, the word Paro means it reveals. A place where all lights are revealed from. That means the quintessence of essence from where all revelation comes from. That level is the level of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei. So we have a progression. In the Parshas Va'era, we have the revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei, but that's the chitzonius, the external of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the external part of the Yud Kei, the lower Yud Kei Vav Kei. But in Parshas Bo, we're coming to, Hashem takes Moshe Rabbeinu in above the Yud Kei Vav Kei, in a sense we can say, to the thorn, the crown that's on top of the Yud, before the Yud Kei Vav Kei, that where the whole Yud Kei Vav Kei comes from. That's the essence of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, or what we call the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei, or as the Rebbe refers to it in the Sikha, V'hachamishis leparoi, the fifth dimension. We know the Yud Kei Vav Kei has 4 letters. Yud Kei Vav Kei corresponding to the 4 elements, to the 4 types of life, and finally to the 4 worlds. So there's but then there is beyond that. That's not divine, that's all divine expression. And there is higher than that, the divine essence. That's the 5th level. So by Paro, it also says that when Yosef was collecting taxes, it says that the people were able to keep 4/5 to themselves from all the crops, and 1/5 they had to give to Paro. That was a tax. And the concept behind it is that Paro, the level of Paro, represents this 5th dimension, which is the essence of God. And that's where Hashem takes Moshe Rabbeinu in to an encounter. That's the revelation of Mashiach, the revelation of Boi El Paro, the deepest inner core, the highest innermost point. So the 3 Parshios then, Shemos, Ve'era, and Shmois, Ve'era, and Boi, represent a progression from the work of the Avos, that's Shmois, and that's why when we take a look at Parsha Shemos, we see it's mainly the work of the Jewish people, Bikur HaBarzel, when they were in the ovens of Egypt. It's called the welding ovens, or where the cubicles where they melt gold. It was this hot refineries. So Mitzrayim was a refinery. And so that corresponds to it's a hachana, it's a preparation. It's a preparation for the giving of the Torah. So that corresponds to the lives of the Avos, which was a period of time to prepare the world for the giving of the Torah. It was all the hard labor and the hard work. Ve'era itself is Ve'era that to the Jewish people I want to do Havaya, which is the revelation of Matan Torah. So that is the period from the giving of the Torah until Mashiach. And finally, in Parshas Boi, we reach the ultimate, which is the revelation of Mashiach itself, post-Matan Torah, which not only are we going to have access to God in the physical, we're also going to have the experience of Hashem himself, even down here, even in the physical. Now the Rebbe says, based on all of this, we can say, and here's where he makes the connection to the time that we're reading it in this particular time, in this man introducing Chodesh Shvat. He says the Shabbos that Parshas Ve'era is usually Shabbos Mevorchim Chodesh Shvat, and as I said, even though we're now going to already do Shabbos Mevorchim Chodesh Adar, but let's still connect. We still have all the power to connect to the energy of Chodesh Shvat. In Chodesh, so the Rebbe says the relationship of Shabbos Mevorchim is that it's the last Shabbos of the previous month, and it's the introduction to the next month. So in which 2 months is Parshas Ve'era converging? Which 2 months is it attaching? It's attaching the 10th month to the 11th month. So right away over here, the Rebbe says, you see already the essence of what we spoke about before. The number 10 represents perfection, because 10 is a perfect number. So if 10 is a perfect number, why do we have a number 11? Number 11 represents that which is infinitely transcending all perfection, and that's God himself. 10 represents God's perfection, but God being perfect, which means God assimilating a certain or assuming a certain perfect form, but yet having a certain identity. 11 represents the essence of God that can't be defined by anything. Chad v'loi b'chushban, as Hashem is one and he can't be numerated with qualities, beyond all definitions and all qualities. So 11 is associated with the concept of the essence, associated with Parshas Bo, Paroi, Isperuyim and Ekol Nahoirin. It itself is not part of the lights. All lights come from it, but it transcends the lights. That's the idea of number 11, the one that's before the emanation of all 10 lights, and 10 represents perfection of every type of light. 10, however, represents the perfect. So how does it relate to what we were speaking about before? We have the work of the fathers, our forefathers, which was introduction. Then we have the giving of the Torah, which the giving of the Torah enables us to serve God in a perfect way. We utilize all of our 10 powers through the Torah, giving us the entire structure of human behavior, which represents all of our powers of our soul, Torah guiding us in how to live and so on and so forth, to be able to serve Hashem in the most perfect way. That's number 10. When you complete, the Rebbe says, the 10th month, it represents completion of all the work that we needed to do by the giving of the Torah, or as a result of the giving of the Torah, and then the implementation of the perfection that we need to perfect the world in order to herald in the time when God himself is going to move into this world and fully reveal himself in the world, and that is the days of Mashiach. And that is already number 11. So number 11 is already messianic. Number 10 represents completing the work in our days to prepare for Mashiach. 11 is already Mashiach. Now the Rebbe says, that's why. Let's take a look at the name Shvat. Incredible things the Rebbe says over here. Chodesh Shvat, which the Rebbe says is Shvat, you can see the name itself of Shvat represents already the future, the coming of Mashiach. Why? Because he says that Shvat comes from the word Shiftei Moishlim. Shiftei Moishlim means the tribe of the rulers. It's a pasuk in Yecheskel. The tribe of the rulers. Shevet means a tribe, and it says specially, in other words, the ruling family. He says specially, that's called Shvat. So we're talking about the aristocrats, holy aristocrats. And particularly, he says, the government of the kingdom of Beis David, Malchus Beis David, its governorship. Like it says in the Pasuk, Lo Yasur Shevet Mi Yehuda. So where do you see that Shvat, Shevet, is talking about David HaMelech's Moishel, David HaMelech's dominion. Because it says openly, Lo Yasur Shvat, Shevet Mi Yehuda. There will never depart a ruling power from Yehuda, which Shavat or Shevet means a ruling power. And the pasuk says specifically, and that's going to continue until Mashiach comes. Ad ki yavoi Shiloi, Melech HaMashiach, which by regarding Melech HaMashiach itself, it also says the word Shvat. See, this is regarding to the tribe itself, the family of David. But regarding Melech HaMashiach, it says, V'kam, when Bilam is foreseeing Mashiach, he says, V'kam, Darach Koichav me Yaakov, the star will shoot forth from Jacob, from Yaakov, V'kam Shevet, and a ruling power, Shvat, me Yisroel, from Yisroel, which is Melech HaMashiach. So he says the word Shvat itself, the name, is that this name of the month is indicative of Malchus Beis David. And the other thing it means, that's one pirush in the word Shvat, it means the family of rulers. It also means a branch. Which branch? It says in Yeshaya, also in chapter 11, Vayotzer choiter migeza Yishai, a little twig will come forth from Geza Yishai, from the family of Yishai, v'netzer mishrash of Yivre. So it says over there, Yotzer Shevet Melucha Mishayresh Yishai. A branch of rulership will go out from Yishai's family, Mizera David Melech HaMashiach, 72. That is the Mitzudais. So he uses the word Shevet. Shevet meaning a branch of leadership of Shevet Yehuda. So first of all, I think this is one of the very explicit places where the Rebbe is connecting Chodesh Shvat to Mashiach Tzidkenu himself. Now everybody knows that the Rebbe, especially in this Sikha, is going to talk about the 10th day of Shvat, where the previous Rebbe passes away and the Rebbe becomes a Rebbe. And so he's very clearly connecting his leadership in Chodesh Shvat to the Malchus of Beis David. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see it over here in a very strong way. Now he continues in Perik in Seif Yud, and even more emphasized in our generation, that the 10th, this is in general, Chodesh Shvat throughout all history, had the segula of again, it's number 11. It's connected to Mashiach for two reasons. First of all, it's connected because of the word Shvat. Shvat means rulership, and particularly the ultimate ruler who is Mashiach Tzidkenu. And secondly, what's Mashiach going to reveal? Number 11. And that's why we're going to see that everything related to Shvat is number 11. Shvat itself is the 11th month. And then the year the Rebbe became Rebbe is the 11th Tafshin Yud Aleph, 5711. And on the 11th day of the 11th month, and by the way, parenthetically, the Rebbe's birthday, even though it's not in Shvat, it's on the 11th day of the month of redemption, also number 11. So it's all connected to the koyach of Mashiach, the koyach of the Goyel. It says particularly in Yanai, so it's the yahrzeit, he says, of the Friediger Rebbe. He says, what's the concept of a yahrzeit? The concept of a yahrzeit is that the whole power of the tzaddik and all of his work that he's done, it all bears fruit. It all shines forth on that day. It's one very potent day in which all the work of the tzaddik suddenly comes pouring down and affects and impacts the world. As it says in Tanya, Poyel Yeshua is Bekerev Haaretz. It has a huge effect in the earth, meaning all the way down in the physical world, the work of the tzaddik shows its power, and it manifests on the day of his yahrzeit more than any other time. So therefore, he says, and not only that, but not only the work that he does, but also that that day contains within itself not the work that he did in the previous, but also the power of whatever is going to sprout forth from the tzaddik's work. Ultimately, until the ultimate sprouting, the Rebbe says, which is the sprouting of Mashiach, the Geula Amitis, the redemption, which is Mashiach Tzidkenu, which he says, which is we have already the testimony of the Nasi of our generation, and we've already finished everything, and everything is already muchan to the Suda. Everything is prepared for the meal of Mashiach. We have already the table. We have the Suda, the Leviyasin. We have the Sharabar. We have already the wine. We have everything already here. Okay, so now he says something really, really awesome. He says we can take a look and we can see that the general time, if we're taking a look at the lifespan of the entire period of time related to Yud Shvat, which is the life of the previous Rebbe, we can see that his life is connected to three periods. What are the three periods? The Rebbe is learning the three periods of the Friediger Rebbe's life as follows. The first period is the time when he wasn't Rebbe yet, the first 40 years of his life, when his father was still the Rebbe and he was the son. Then comes, he was the Rebbe in the making. Then comes the second period of the previous Rebbe's life, which is 30-year period when he was a Rebbe. And then the Rebbe learns as a continuum, because the Rebbe sees his leadership and his own Nesius of the seventh generation as a continuation of the sixth generation, as one entity. We spoke about that many times Kabbalistically because Yisod and Malchus are intertwined and inseparable. So in any case, so the Rebbe divides the previous Rebbe's life period to 3 tekufas, the last one being his tekufa of the Rebbe's leadership, the last 40 years of the Rebbe's leadership, from Tafshin Yud, 42 years, until, and then not just 42 years, the entire time, until we have Mashiach Tzidkenu fully revealed here. Okay, so now he says these 3 periods of time fit very much. So what happened during these 3 periods of time? The first period of time when his father was Rebbe, during that time, that was considered like post-giving of the Torah. Why was it considered post-giving of the Torah? Because that's when the foundation was laid for the work of Chabad that was going to happen in the world, to transform and elevate the entire world and make it into the garden of Hashem, the last and final work that needs to be done before Mashiach comes. Why? Because in order to be able to have this major operation, you needed soldiers. And the previous, the 5th Chabad Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, Rebbe Shalom Dev Ber, was the person who instituted a systematic yeshiva where boys can study Chassidus, which seasoned them and prepared them for this enormous task of Mesiras Nefesh in order to be able to complete the work of all the Jewish people throughout all the generations. So therefore, the first 30 years of the previous Rebbe's life, 40 years, where he was under the tutelage of his father, in a sense he was also the leader of the yeshiva part of the time, this was all the time considered before Matan Torah, which was a preparation it's doing a certain preparation for the giving of the Torah. Then he says the second period of time in the Friedrich Rebbe's life was his own Nesius. Now during the time that he was the Nesius, what was his main chiddush, other than he fought the Russians and all of that, and he broke through with Mesiras Nefesh, but one of his greater chidushim was he spread the wellsprings of Chassidus, which is godliness. But Be'ikar, his main chiddush was that he was the one who reached the lower half of the globe. He brought Chassidus to America. Chassidus Chabad, but Chassidus Chabad, which is the knowledge of God, he brought it down here to America, which is called Chatzi Kader Atachten, which this idea that you can have Chassidus, even in America, which is so materialistic and so thick, and even over here you can have a connection to Hashem, which is the connection comes through Chassidus. This is the whole idea of the giving of the Torah, that God can come down even to the lowest of places. So therefore the Rebbe sees the life of the Friedrich Rebbe himself, his leadership, as the period of time of the giving of the Torah. And then finally, the 40 years that come after when the previous Rebbe passed away in 1950, and then beginning in 1950 or in 1951, the period of time since then. At the time the Rebbe said the Sikha, it was 40 years, and now it's 42 years, and now it's 70 years that we're reaching, which during this period of time is the time that the main work of reaching actually from the lowest point of the world, spreading Yiddishkeit and elevating the entire planet, setting up a global network to reach and to affect every Jew in every corner of the world with the godliness of Chassidus, which leads up to Mamish, the revelation of Mashiach. Therefore, the Rebbe learns that this final period is already considered the period of the revelation of Yemoisa Mashiach, the Gilui of Yudke Vavke de Le'ela, the higher Yudke Vavke, which allows for godliness to flood the entire world as it is flooding the world now, and hopefully in a way that is going to be completely revealed once Mashiach is revealed. But these are the 3 periods. It's Shmois, Ve'era, and Boi in the life of the previous Rebbe. Then the Rebbe wants to narrow it down and say that really in the 30 years of the previous Rebbe himself, not counting the time of his, when he was not Rebbe, or the time after his passing, but in his 30 years of his life itself, you can see these 3 tekufos, these 3 periods. Pre-Torah, Torah, and Mashiach. The first 10 years of his life, he was fighting the communists. So that work was a work of Mesiras Nefesh, and that work, he was arrested and he was fighting it. So that was considered like the work, like being in Egypt. He was under incredible duress and persecution, and so it was like Galus Mitzrayim for the previous Rebbe. And his work was Mesiras Nefesh, similar to the work of the Avos, which was pure Mesiras Nefesh. Then came the second Tekufa, when he came to Poland. Next 10 years in his life, he was in Poland. In Poland, the previous Rebbe had a challenge that he had to introduce the teachings of Chassidus to a already Chassidic environment. And what do I mean by that? Chassidus of Poland was one that did not emphasize the study and the knowledge of God per se in an expansive manner. Everybody knows, who knows the difference between a Chassidus of Poland and Chassidus Chabad, is that Polish Chassidus only touches upon small little points of the esoteric. Chassidus Chabad emphasizes the need and the importance of actually coming to know Hashem and use your mind to study and to learn and to know godliness in a very expansive way. So the Rebbe says that's literally the concept. The fact that he introduced into Poland Chassidus Chabad, that's the idea of Matan Torah. What's the idea of Matan Torah? Hashem says, I want you to know, Ani Havai, I want you to know me. Through the giving of the Torah, we get to know God. So the second 10 years of the previous Rebbe's life, where he was mainly engaged in bringing Chassidus, in teaching Chassidus, so this was the gilui of the giving of the Torah. Then the last 10 years of his life, when he came to America, is when he started to reach out, to refine the lowest tier of creation. And the main thing was to flood the world with the teachings of Chassidus, and that it should reach people that are very far out. That's the whole idea, that when he came to America, the whole concept of shlichus, the foundation, the seeds were planted for shlichus that later became so much greater, but at least the foundations was planted. That work is already Mashiach. As the Friedrich Rebbe then was pushing Mashiach. That's when it started, where he said, La'alta l'tshuva, we do tshuva, and La'alta l'geula, that's when we're going to have Mashiach. Because that was already the last and final push for the Geula. So these are the three tkufas in the Friedrich Rebbe's life. And therefore the Rebbe says, what are we supposed to learn from all of this? That every single one of us has to increase and intensify our bond with the Rebbe. That's what he says. We have to, by fulfilling all of his teachings and his takanas, he instituted various different things like Chitas, Rambam, and things that when he speaks about his father-in-law, he means himself too, obviously. So all the takanas and miftzayim and all the other things that we do, and that a person has to make himself to a point where his entire existence, he says, is given over to the Nasi, to the Rebbe. That he says, "But kol echad ve'echad." Everyone read this inside. Mitzayase, his entire existence, v'chol inyan, of everything that he owns and everything belongs to him. Bakol mikol kol, everything that you can have. Nasim Kodesh becomes completely holy. Asiri Kodesh, it becomes completely dedicated and sanctified. L'nasi hador, devoted, given over to the leader of the generation. Through this, that we fulfill his shlichus of the Nasi of the generation, who, by the way, who is the Nasi of the generation? He's the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation. And this Moshe Rabbeinu, we're not talking about some figurative Moshe Rabbeinu, he's literally Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is the first Redeemer, he's also going to be the last Redeemer, which his main inyan, the Rebbe says, of Nasi Hador, which he's referring to himself, is one thing, Lahavi Li'moisa Mashiach, to bring the actual coming of Mashiach. And the Rebbe therefore is asking the Chassidim to melt their existence completely into him, to completely devote themselves without and not hold anything back. Everything, every element of their existence should be totally batal to the instructions and to the will and to the directives of the Nasi Hador, and then we become part of his powerful force of Geula and of redemption, enabling the Geula to happen. And then he adds an interesting thing. He says, Lahoisif, to add that the knowledge, that a person suddenly realizes that in any second, he says, not in any second, he says, take of me out instantly. My father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, walks in, Nasi Dareinu. And now after Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe was then giving us a something where he's talking about his father-in-law. But obviously, I think the Rebbe meant for us today after Gimel Tammuz, that the Nasi Hador, which is the Rebbe, walks in, since the Kitzav Rananu Sheikh Neyafar, and he's going to take a look at all the Chassidim and all of those that were connected to him to inspect their condition of where you're holding. And when you can only think about this in a very real way, this will give you such a tremor and such a shake, and this will itself affect and impact us that we should be able to complete the work and do what we need to do, which is to complete the Geula. And therefore the Rebbe says, What should we do about all of this? How do we strengthen our hiskashus and everything? So we should make farbrengens, especially from starting Shabbos Kodesh Mevorchim Chodesh Shvat. In addition to every Shabbos, you should have people gathering, especially on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. That Moshe Rabbeinu gathered people and reviewed the whole Torah. So in order to evoke, to arouse, and to strengthen each other in all the above mentioned matters, and particularly that everybody should be driven with a super drive to bring to hasten and to drive the geula instantly. Also, there should be we should be inspired and awakened to make farbrengens on Yud Shvat itself, because it's for sure, he says, going to be together with the Friediger Rebbe and Moshe and Aaron, and Kivim Shatekom Miyad Mamash B'Yom HaShabbos Kodesh Parshas Ve'era. All the Jewish people go out of Gullus to their complete redemption, which includes also the Ali of the Bnei Yisroel. We're all going to be elevated to the level of the Avos, which is the essence of the Jewish people as they are one with the essence of God. And within this itself, higher and higher and higher and higher, as it says, Yechu Machayel El Choyel Yero Elokim B'Tzion, Mebeis HaMikdash HaShlishi V'Hamshul Shemikdash Hashem Koinu Yodech. Okay, Be'ezus Hashem, next week we shall start the next Dvar Malchus. May all of this already come to fruition now.
Things happen to the best of us. Sometimes mistakes are just part of life. We're living in a perfect world. We have to try to make the perfect world a little bit better, tiny little baby steps at a time. So if nothing to feel bad about happens, then if we remember the night before when we were filling it out, we said, I'll fill in the date tomorrow or something like that. While we're sitting together at the table the night before, like when you read us through the meaning of the words and all the differences and the valuations of the money, you said, I'll fill out the actual date tomorrow. And obviously, I never bothered checking because I don't know. Anyway, it is what it is. We're here. We must have had reason. Hashem must have had reasons. So we did what we need to do. And we're not angry at you, not hold grudge. So there's no reason to say forgive you. So we're all in this together. And thank you for doing everything you did for us. And everything for us. For all the 150 things you did, or whatever you want to call it, that was one time mistake. So thank you for all the good things and all the progress and all the hashlama, or really close to hashlama that we got to. And the little things, just to fix along the way. We're Baruch Hashem all still working